Elizabeth Warren has been facing a lot of questions over the past few weeks since the Democratic debate, at the very least, about how she plans to pay for her Medicare for All plan and what exactly it will look like. And that is because Medicare for All is a benefit that you would get. And so you need to explain how it's paid for. If it's bombs, it's free. You don't have to talk about it. But if it's Medicare, we really need to know. And so now her plan is available, or at least a proposal about her plan. It's not the actual legislation, but she does have a post that's like 20 pages long about a lot of the details in terms of the financing and everything. So there's a good amount of good here. There's also some bad. We're gonna cover both. First of all, in terms of substantively, how much Medicare for All is it? Well, she says under my plan, Medicare for All will cover the full list of benefits outlined in the Medicare for All Act, including long-term care, audio, vision, and dental benefits. That obviously is intended to match the version that Bernie has put out, that is substantive Medicare for All, that actually not only gives you everything that Medicare currently provides, but actually would expand the coverage to things like vision, dental, those sorts of things. So overall, it is, before we get into the financing and everything, it is substantive healthcare.
Yes. All right, first thoughts on it. And the most important, it's real Medicare for All. Like, super worried that she was gonna listen to advisors going, oh, we gotta get closer to the Democratic Party and everybody thinks it's unrealistic. And let's do like Medicare for all, but for some and for others, not so much. And let's find some compromise on top of compromise. And I'm positive that she had at least some voices counseling her in that direction. She didn't do that. This is actually Medicare for all. It ends private insurance, period. And it brings us to a system where we would all get guaranteed health care, we would get all the benefits that John talked about, and we would save money. Now, when it comes to how she's financing it.
Well, I'm gonna have all the details on that.
No, I know. My overall analysis is, I think it's borderline brilliant. And so, John mentioned some downsides. I'm not even sure I see the downsides. And so we'll talk her through, we'll have a conversation about it, but she did it. It's real Medicare for all, and she clearly pays for it.
Yeah. This was so smart because now in the debates, what she can do, and I agree, this is Medicare for all, but she can say when she is being pressed on where are we gonna get the money from, and I know we're gonna talk about that in a second, and what does it mean? What are the parameters of this Medicare for all that you're proposing? She can say, read the plan. I put it out there, and if you didn't do your job, journalists, to read the plan, then I'm not the one who should be responsible for the fact that you're not doing your work. And it's out here for everybody in the public to see and to comb through it. What she starts with is such a great story about her father and his heart attack and how that led them not only to go to the brink emotionally, but also financially, and how this is such a common story for Americans, but that set the stage for her to really be committed to interrogate what is happening in this industry and how can we radically change it. And the reason why I'm not necessarily surprised of how this turned out is that Elizabeth Warren, I've known some of the work that she's done, especially in her interest around economic policy for middle class folks. She's worked closely with the Roosevelt Institute, which is a think tank that writes about the rules of the economy and wants to shift them dramatically in the favor of average Americans. And so I expected something like this to emerge, but I didn't expect how detailed and how she was gonna answer her critics in a powerful, succinct way.
Yeah, and I will say on top of that, the political framing throughout is excellent. It
phenomenal.
Makes it nearly impossible to argue with from a conservative perspective. Okay, John.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna jump into how she's gonna pay for it. I will say, because many people are gonna be still suspicious, and I get that. No matter who becomes president, even if it's Bernie Sanders, passing Medicare for all is gonna be a monumental struggle. And so who it is that is pushing for it is gonna be really important, perhaps most important to some people. And if you were predisposed to believe that she just can't be trusted on it, then there's nothing that could be written in this document that's gonna change your mind at that point. And I understand, if it comes down to it, I have much more faith in Bernie Sanders to have the organizing ability and the stick-to-itiveness to push difficult legislation through. But we're analyzing this on the substance of what's included there. And if your knee-jerk reaction is to say, well, it's really easy to write anything in a proposal, I would counter by saying, I've looked at a lot of the people in the Democratic primary. It apparently isn't that easy because they can't put together proposals like this. So now let's get into the actual financing. So she talks about different ways that healthcare could be paid for The first option is the current system, which costs like $52 trillion over this certain amount of time and leaves tens of millions of people without health insurance. Option 2 is switching to Medicare for all, which will cost just about the same money, a little bit less perhaps, for a number of reasons we'll get into. She goes on to say the $11 trillion in household insurance and out-of-pocket expenses projected under our current system goes right back into the pockets of America's working people under this system. And we make up the differences with targeted spending cuts, new taxes on giant corporations and the richest 1% of Americans, and by cracking down on tax evasion and fraud, not one penny in middle-class tax increases. Now, if you think that is gonna stop the questions and the debates in terms of are you gonna raise taxes on middle-class people, it of course is not. Jake Tapper, get ready to ask that question a million times. But anyway, so what does that actually mean? She made references to tax increases on some people. Well, she proposes a financial transactions tax of 0.1% of the value of every stock, bond, or derivatives transaction to raise $800 billion. Then she adds a systemic risk fee on financial institutions with more than $50 billion in assets that will raise $100 billion more. She adds another $2.9 trillion in corporate taxes by ending accelerated cost recovery and imposing a 35% minimum tax on foreign earnings. Her wealth tax now changes as a part of this plan. It now goes up to 6%, which will raise another $1 trillion. Warren also proposes taxing capital gains for the top 1% at the same rate as normal income, and doing so on an annual basis rather than just when a sale is made to raise $2 trillion. Warren proposes a massive increase in IRS enforcement aimed at reducing the tax avoidance rate from 15% down to 10%, which would raise $2.3 trillion. There's a little bit more which we'll get into, but what I like about the financing is it shows that you can pay for this, which we shouldn't need to be shown because we know that many countries around the world already do, but also accomplishes a number of different important goals to finance it. Like lowering tax avoidance by incredibly wealthy people is an objective good by itself. Not to mention, the change to foreign earnings, the systemic risk fee, the wealth tax. I mean, these are good things in terms of income inequality and other things, even absent their ability to pay for something like Medicare for all.
Okay, so let me break down a bunch of things that I was looking for and what did I find. So first of all, in terms of how to pay for it, she was super realistic. And so for example, the tax avoidance that people are doing and increasing IRS enforcement to raise more money. What I was looking for is she going to say that we can make up all the money that people normally cheat on their taxes on? Because if she said that, I would have thought that's unrealistic. So she's stretching things to try to get it done. She didn't. She was very conservative on that. She just said we can raise enough money from that to make up a third of the money that people are cheating on by not paying their taxes. Only a third. And we would have only gotten to a point where we would be half as good as the United Kingdom in catching tax cheats. And she put down specific numbers, which are absolutely true, that for every dollar that you put into the IRS, the government spends on the IRS, we get back $6. Now, the reason we don't do that is because Republicans and corporate Democrats don't want to catch tax cheats because those are their donors. So
and themselves.
In some cases, that as well. So through every step of this, it was not only very realistic, showed you the exact numbers on how you pay for it, and then also she framed it well in terms of how about you guys? What do you get out of it? So she points out that the average American family of 4 pays $12,378 every year in healthcare costs. That's co-pays, premiums, deductibles, and what you pay into your own insurance through an employer, right? So everybody that works at a company, your employer pays part of the cost, you pay part of the cost. When you put all that in, it's over $12,000. That's gone. That's gone under this plan. Okay, so everybody just saved $12,000. Now the second part of it is that employer part that you're paying, the insurance part that you're chipping in through your employer, that then becomes a raise that you get from your employer. That's a double raise. And then so you say, well, okay, how do you pay for it? And then she explains exactly how you do it. So one of the things that she talks about is the bureaucracy costs in private insurance is about 12% of the cost of the system. In Medicare, that already exists, it's 2.3%. So the difference is trillions of dollars. So when you go to Medicare for all and you lower those, well, you just save trillions of dollars. And she goes through trillions by trillions by trillions, showing you exactly how she's paying for it. The only part of the paying for it that I balked at a little bit, and now I'm more conservative than Warren is in this regard, is paying for capital gains yearly as opposed to when you sell something. I know that there's a good progressive argument for that. I think that enforcement's a little hard to do. I'm not sure, I'm not perfectly sold on that. But my God, we're talking about around the edges here, right? So she nailed most of it. And when they go, I kept thinking as I'm reading this whole thing, when Buttigieg or Biden or Trump goes to argue against this, they're gonna get slaughtered. Because she's gonna say, oh, so you want the average American to pay that $12,000? Because that's the current system. Just say it, it's okay, no problem. That's your choice. You're saying the average American should pay the $12,000. So why is it really Medicare for all? So Buttigieg says, I'm doing Medicare for blah, 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 right? And what does that mean? He says, no, I still want you to pay the co-pays, the deductibles, the premiums, but I'm gonna have you pay the government and have that be a public option, or you could pay all that stuff to private insurers, and it keeps the private insurance system intact. That's useless, okay? In this case, she says, no, you don't have to pay for any of that, right? We're gonna raise the money through other means, and she explains meticulously how. So it's real Medicare for all. And when Buttigieg says, no, I wanna defend the current system where 87 million people are either uninsured or underinsured. 37 million people don't buy prescription drugs that they need because they can't afford it. 36 million people don't get treatment that they know they need, the doctors told them they need because they can't afford it, let alone all the bankruptcies. When the Buttigiegs and the Bidens of the world try to defend that, they're gonna get politically hammered. And so I think that with this proposal, I know there's a bold thing to say, but she's cut off the conservative flank of the Democratic Party. They're done for. So I think it's Warren versus Bernie going forward, because they both believe in Medicare for all. Fighting against this from a conservative perspective is gonna be a fool's errand.
Right. And I just want to bring up a stat and then give another sort of framing on the finances. So the other part of the numbers that you mentioned, it's there on her fact sheet. 40 million people don't go see the doctor because they can't afford to per year when they need to get the tests that they need. So also imagine the amount of health cost savings that we have when we have a healthy public. And that's the other thing that the expenses are going towards is emergency procedures, overcrowded ERs. And these are the things that this could solve for. The other thing that I love that she does, we always talk about how people don't ask where the money's gonna come from for corporate welfare. Nobody really cared or asked about Obama and Bush bailing out the banks and where that came from our tax dollars. But she also held the military industrial complex accountable in this. So part of what she is going to rein spending on is the defense industry. And so she said, since the 9/11 attacks, the United States has appropriated $2 trillion to fund combat and counterterrorism operations around the world via the Overseas Contingency Operations Fund. And so that amount is $116 billion per year. She's proposing to cut that. Imagine how much we would save when we also pull from these industries that aren't doing anything for us, and they are taking our tax dollars. We don't ask how we are funding the military or how we're funding corporate greed. We just always ask about the thing that actually is the most imperative in our lives. And it's funny that you bring up Buttigieg because I don't know if folks know, but Buttigieg's father is a preeminent scholar on Gramsci. He translates Gramsci, and Gramsci is like the godfather in communist socialist thought. So he clearly made calculations because he was exposed to Gramsci's thinking via his father. And I hope that does wash away that tide of the Democratic Party, and especially young folks who think that they could masquerade as a Democrat while espousing conservative values.
Yeah. All right, last thing, guys. One other part of the proposal that I loved, it shows that she's a true progressive. Now you could, by the way, if you say, no, I think Bernie can get it done better, he has a higher likelihood of passing it with putting grassroots pressure, et cetera, that is a perfectly fair thing to think. And Bernie is the one who wrote the damn bill in the first place. He's the reason
we're talking about
it. Exactly, he's been pushing it forward for 40 years, and you want to vote for Bernie based on that? That makes perfect sense, okay? But the thing you cannot say is that Warren's not a real progressive. This is massively progressive, and on top of the cutting the defense spending and charging more for the banks and et cetera, is she brings corporate tax rates back up. Now, when you'll know a fake progressive when they say, oh yes, these corporate tax cuts were terrible, we need to bring them back up to 25%. You're like, wait a minute, they weren't 25%, they were 35%. And Warren says, oh yeah, we're gonna bring them back up to 35%. Not only that, we're gonna go all across the world and say, hey, you wanna hide your money in the Cayman Islands, Ireland, Netherlands, wherever you wanna hide it? No, you're gonna pay 35%, no ands, ifs, or buts. So that's Wall Street would read this and they will be furious because it has a financial transaction tax, it holds corporations accountable and wipes out the healthcare industry that's been bilking us for trillions of dollars, sucking off of us, the American people, for trillions upon trillions of dollars and putting it into their pockets. She talks about how the top 62 CEOs got $1.1 billion in pay last year. Okay, that's all coming out of our pocket for no damn reason. Wall Street will hate this, the American people will love it, and it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that she's a true progressive. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.